Spain has its running of the bulls. Brazil, its carnival. And here in New Zealand, once every 2 years, we have something even better. Something called the Inorganic Collection. It's evidence of our insatiable desire to consume and then discard. It's evidence of something that's always been with us from the Big Bang to Big Wednesday. Something called greed. Perhaps our greatest metaphors of greed are the gigantic fruit and veg that mark the insatiable civic craving for fame and passing trade. Or was it merely a need to be noticed that drove the people of Ohakune to purchase this behemoth carrot, a leftover from an ANZ TV advertisement?
It's a big day, not to mention a big carrot, for Ohakune. After 2 years of planning, the town is finally getting its giant vegetable.
Greed was also behind the country's largest hot dog, unveiled in Mosgiel in 1984.
Warren White and Rod McGregor made the roll, and local butcher Ray Keane supplied the sausage, all 10 kilos of it. About 11 kilos of flour we used in the 4-metre loaf. The problem was getting the loaf from its container and keeping the sausage intact. However, once that was sorted out, the hot dog was on its way to the Mosgiel Trades Fair. There it was ceremoniously delivered to the stage, where it went on sale to raise money for the Mosgiel Lions Centennial Project.
4 years earlier, a giant sausage roll was rolled out in Whakatane. But this was greed for a good cause and in good taste. Sadly, sometimes good old-fashioned greed turns to gluttony. And in recent years, speed-eating competitions have become a national obsession, with those who can eat the fastest being treated like greedy gods.
Watch the man in green. 6 down in 10 seconds. The champion.
Ready, setty, go. 5 at a time, cold, and with lots of sauce. The winner paying a terrible price.
Of all the gluttonous manifestations of our voracity, the meat pie is perhaps the greatest exemplification. And our proclivity to the pastry has been rather rapacious. Already addicted to pies, New Zealanders soon moved on to the hamburger. We pigged out like little pigs on these American pies, but we can at least lay claim to the biggest burger in the world, the Georgie burger.
The Georgie burger usually has 3 or 4 steaks, depends on the size of them. I've got 4 on here because they're fairly small today.
The Georgie burger was the favourite meal at the North Shore Rugby Club. Some players couldn't finish the Georgie, but Buck Shelford was said to have been able to scoff one down before demolishing a plate of chips.
Voila, the Georgie burger. As everyone goes, it's a Georgie.
So, food. I don't eat a lot of it. You know, I stick to drugs more. You know, I like pee and. Yeah, I like to use the needle. It's cleaner, I think, than all this food down the gullet.
Sadly, for children, pee and heroin are not an option. For them, the pushers are not the dodgy types you find on corners, but the corner dairies themselves.
This is the Premier Dairy, strategically placed near both Seddon and a neighbouring intermediate school. It's 8:15 a.m.
Yeah, something like that.
And what do you buy, an ice cream in the morning?
Yeah, and a pie usually at school.
And a pie in the morning?
No, for lunch.
Pie for lunch?
Yeah.
What about after school? Do you ever get anything after school?
Ice cream sometimes.
I suppose the ratio would be 1 item of fruit to a dozen donuts. As a parent, I find it revolting. As a businessman, I find it exceedingly attractive.
Thanks very much, Ronnie. Food like this is frowned upon today, but scaremongering about obesity is nothing new.
New Zealanders today start as overfed babies, they develop into greedy, sweet-toothed infants, they become overweight and unhealthy children, and after maturing into suitably obese adults, they die at an early age. The outlook, I'm afraid, is just a bit bleak.
While our national anthem may have changed, this remarkable documentary from 1976 clearly illustrates that our obsession with alarmist obesity propaganda has been pumping through our clogged arteries for quite some time.
We are a fat and happy land. And while we may not be getting any happier, it's beginning to seem certain that we're getting fatter and fatter and fatter.
I'm bloody sure when Captain Cook arrived here, and he had a lot of contact with Maoris, but he never saw any fat ones. And now we have this atrocity in front of us all the time. Of poor buggers arriving to this country and being greeted by some ape chanting on that with a pot belly and a grass skirt and waving a bloody spear in their face. It's disgraceful, it really is. It's embarrassing. I'm very embarrassed at times to be a New Zealander.
Unlike Captain Cook, David Frost met plenty of overweight Kiwis when he was dispatched from London in 1973 to help us handle our love handles and down under bum blubber.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome to our show on the subject of the Fat Society. And New Zealanders are supposed to be among the biggest eaters in the world, over 3,000 calories a day. Over half the population is supposed to be overweight.
I'm big and fat and
Frost's broadcast showcased our fat fraternity, including the Bucklands Beach Boomsticks Club with their remarkable pig song.
I ate all week and gained some weight. Oh, what a pig I am.
All together now. Let's just see it in action one more time. The cameraman over there wants to see it in action.
The show featured fat cutting-edge technology, like the bum wobbler, the Thai Happy Totty Twinger, the mobile sauna, and of course, the corset.
Anyone here who wears your corsets? Anybody?
Yes, I have a number in my close proximity.
This is the corset-wearing group here.
But as is often the case, the best treatment of all was good old-fashioned common sense.
Basically, there are 3 ways to lose weight. One is keep your mouth shut for longer. The other is to do exercise, or preferably do a combination of both.
Greed was also a popular subject for our early animators, who took to the topic with relish. But as we'll soon see, greed takes many forms.
$54,000 worth of secret sound on the line.
It's your chance to get closer to $1 million.
Radio stations, ever greedy for publicity and ratings, have always been quick to exploit their listeners, ever greedy for prizes and for accolades.
Day 12, and 8 bodies huddle in misery against the cold and rain.
New Zealanders, it seems, will do anything in the name of frequency modulation.
Well, I really need money. I'm quite far in debt.
Whether it be living on a billboard for yonks.
They say misery loves company, or I think insanity does as well. You've got 6 wacky people up here.
Demolishing a cake in search of a diamond ring.
I was thinking, don't let yourself down. Don't get excited. I get it, yeah.
Public denudement for cash.
20 keen streakers struck their stuff on the Basin Reserve.
Or a week's bondage with a complete stranger for a measly $2,000. But perhaps the most famous example of this madness involved Mark Sainsbury and inappropriate touching. The year was 1991. The country was in the grip of a recession, and the disenfranchised would do almost anything to acquire a status symbol, even a humble Honda City.
I'm sorry, I just feel a bit faint.
The laying on of hands became a cruel contest of will. When these people competed for a car by keeping their hands on it for nigh on a week.
Kick it back. Come on. Breathing, mate. Breathe, mate. Breathe. Breathe, mate. Come on. Suck it in. Suck it in.
Well, there's a lot of psychological warfare going on at the moment. They're psyching each other out now, just staring at each other, but they've been living together now for nearly 5 days, and they know what hour they all get weak, and they know who sleeps and when they don't, and they all play games with each other and try and make themselves visible so to psych the other guy out. You know, it's been going on now. It's just incredible. We just can't believe it.
Like two titans, mere exhaustion wouldn't rob them of victory. Then finally, inexplicably, 113 hours after starting, Pat inadvertently lifted his hand. Judith had won. Not that she knew it.
Stay there.
Stop freaking me out.
Hey, listen to me. Stay there.
Just where you are.
It's all right.
It's all right.
As a who's of athletics,
she's gone.
There could be more superstars on the way.
Yeah, she's okay now. It's okay. That's it. Judy, that's it.
won.
We won. You won. You've done it. You've done it.
We can go home and go to bed now. You can get some sleep. And you did it. You stuck it out. You didn't quit.
All right.
The subject of inappropriate touching and sexual greed was also touched on in the popular 1970s sitcom Dr. Rangi.
Dr. Rangi, when you said you were going to help me with my human anatomy, I didn't think you meant literally.
Well, Miss Betty, there's no substitute for practical experience.
Dr. Rangi, can you help? Oh, I'm sorry. Is this a bad time?
Actually, I'd say this is a good time.
It's just that there's been an accident, Doctor. Can you come?
I should do, if you don't distract me.
Oh, Dr. Rangi.
The discovery of gold in central Otago in the 1880s may have sparked the biggest speculative boom in our history, but it certainly wasn't to be the last. And since the 1980s, the country has been in the grip of yet another gold rush. And it's a rush that's every bit as greedy.
At 280,000. At 285. At 285 it is. At 290. At $290,000. At $290,000 I am bid.
Such is our greed for property profits. Experts believe that if time machines did exist, 4 out of 5 people would use them to go back and buy property.
For the third and final call, 295,000. Are you all done, finished and silent at that figure?
But this current fixation with property prices is nothing new. A point vividly illustrated by this dramatised conversation from the Larnac Castle archives.
Well, we had a valuer appraise the estate this summer. Only bought 2 years ago. Turns out we've already tripled our money.
You've done well.
Tell me about your portfolio, Sir Graham.
Well, of course, we got in early.
When Mother and I first bought, we got most of Middle Island for 100 pigs, 20 blankets, a couple of muskets and a Jew's off.
Nowadays, you'd be lucky to get Taranaki for that.
It's just so difficult for young couples trying to buy their first province.
Our youngest Simon couldn't afford a province. Best he could do was some place called Waiheke Island.
That's a rat-infested rock.
Sadly, conversations like this plague dinner parties up and down the country to this very day.
More kiwi, sir.
Have you ever found yourself stuck in a conversation about property prices?
My friend Barry Saunders of Waratah fame and, well, Barry Saunders fame, always, he and I have a good joke. One of these days we're going to do a tour. It's going to be called the Bought at a Good Time Tour. We both get great humour of these people who sort of say, well, Jeremy, bought at a good time. Neither of us have bought at a good time because neither of us have bought.
It just bores me, you know? Like you sit there and you go, oh yeah, just nod your head politely. But inside you're just going, shut up.
I think as a country we've succumbed to the capitalist dream of making money without having to do anything socially productive. And I think that the greed for profit from property investing is ruining our social cohesion by driving up house prices so that young families have no hope of owning their own home.
Most morality tales about greed end in ruin. But this next tale of one New Zealander's greed had a far worse ending. Humiliatingly, it ended on this wharf, when a legend known as Merv the Swerve walked straight into the unloving clutches of Holmes reporter Rod Vaughan. Mervyn Hunt suffered his 15 minutes of infamy when the Waiheke Island ferry docked in Auckland on an unseasonally warm day in September 1990. Vaughan was there to greet him.
Rod Vaughan from the Holmes television program. Understand you've been on a bit of a spending spree lately.
No.
No. Been buying some property up in the Waiheke?
No.
You haven't?
No.
No. I see.
So you misunderstood.
You
misunderstood everything that's been told.
Is that right? You've been buying a few yachts lately and, cars?
No.
Is that not correct?
No.
Oh, it was
looking but not buying.
Looking but not buying, is that right?
That's
I see.
correct.
Merv and his partner Doris are familiar figures on the Auckland scene. Familiar to countless real estate agents, yacht brokers and car dealers. People who've been led to believe he's a person of some substance.
Flash car, flash yacht, and flash Waiheke property. He spun a line that he was a retired brigadier general who owned a factory in Detroit, real estate in Beverly Hills, chartered boats in Florida, and had farms in New Zealand. After he went fishing for one of these floating palaces, he was remembered fondly by marine broker Jeff Tyler.
He walked all over it and he said, this is the boat that I want to buy. And I said, well, let's get a contract out and sign her up.
And he just signed along the dotted line, no questions asked?
No questions asked. Yeah.
Vaughan takes up the story of Merv's interest in this exclusive $3.5 million Waiheke Island hideaway.
He invited Merv to spend the night here. and it seems it was a fairly memorable occasion. Merv took a liking to Jim Beam bourbon, and during the course of the evening consumed about a litre of it. Well, he was so hungover the next day, he couldn't sign the contract to purchase this property.
But poor old Merv could not give Vaughan the swerve. Vaughan kept at him because he knew the truth about Merv, that he was twice done for fraud and never bought the flash car, flash yacht or flash property because he didn't have any money. What he did have was his Doris. Merv, 42, met pensioner Doris Smith at the Manhattan nightclub in Mount Roskill. The two lovebirds operated from Doris's bright red shack in Ellerslie. Here's Doris's clapped out Hillman Avenger, and here's Doris's nice white pussy. But were Merv and Doris guilty of anything more than pressing their noses up against the best things money could buy? A nation watched, fascinated, as the Holmes program ran down Merv and Doris with their own clapped out Hillman Avenger, Rod Vaughan.
Well, our first donation has arrived in the studio. Of course, people bring donations in, and, well, here it is right here. Come around the back, George.
But it was the opposite of greed that gripped the nation when Telethon hooted its way into our hearts and pockets in 1976.
Rachel, would you like to present it?
Thank you, Rachel. That's lovely. There it is. Our first donation. $67. Well, that's something to start with.
$67 may not seem like much by today's standards. Indeed, it would not go very far in most of these average Kiwi households. And yet, $67 is enough to buy you an hour with a young woman at a suburban brothel like this. And you'd still get change for a pie and a couple of scratchies. It's a reminder that everything is for sale and everything has a buyer.
Hello, darling.
In this, our Aotearoa, land of greed.
I ate all weekend and gained some weight. I ate all weekend, gained some weight. I ate all weekend, gained some weight. Oh, what a pig I am.
All together now.
Glory, glory, she's got fatter. Glory, glory, she's got fatter. I'm so glad I'm on the outside here to swim.
Now, where's the third verse? Is it down here? Is this it?